balloon. This morning, China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs protesting the U.S. response and warning it reserves the right to take action.
The response coming hours after a U.S. fighter jet shot one missile into the balloon, immediately sending it plunging to the sea off the South Carolina coast.
And the race is now on in the search for debris fallen that has been scattered in the ocean. The U.S. in hopes of gathering any possible intelligence about the Chinese device. So let's begin our coverage with ABC's Ellen Lopez there in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Ellen, good morning.
Yeah, Janae, good morning. All eyes were on the skies. People across the country from Montana to right here in Myrtle Beach catching a glimpse of that massive Chinese balloon before it was shot down. Now China says it has a right to respond. This morning, the race is on to collect the fallen debris of the Chinese spy balloon after it was shot down by a U.S. fighter jet off the coast of South Carolina.
Holy! We have eyes on the balloon falling.
A senior U.S. official saying the balloon was hit by a single F-22 firing an air-to-air missile roughly 6 nautical miles off the South Carolina coast. The military operation ending a 3-day spectacle as Pentagon officials tracked the balloon's every movement since being spotted over Montana, flying at an altitude of at least 60,000 feet. The massive balloon making its way across several sensitive military installations as it flew over the continental U.S., seen in Wyoming, Kansas, and Missouri, before getting to the Carolinas, where it was shot down off Myrtle Beach. President Biden saying he initially wanted to take down the balloon as soon as possible, but the Pentagon advised otherwise, and the calculation was made to wait.
Without doing damage to anyone on the ground. They decided that the best time to do that was as it got over water outside within 12-mile limit. They successfully took it down.
China blasting the decision, calling it an excessive reaction, adding that it retains the right to respond further.
The U.S. airspace was violated by this Chinese spy balloon. If the U.S. is able to recover some of these sensors and determine that the Chinese were in fact spying on sensitive areas within the U.S., it will put a chill on an already chilly relationship between the two countries.
The Pentagon saying the debris field now extends for 7 full miles of shallow water. That's about 47 feet deep. Multiple U.S. Navy and Coast Guard ships securing a perimeter and beginning a search mission.
What the U.S. Navy is looking for, what the Coast Guard is looking for, is where is that payload? Where is the metal part of the balloon that was underneath that balloon that holds the sensors?
That metal part, a large array of technology running the size of 3 bus lengths. And not the first Chinese balloon of its kind. This video from Colombia possibly capturing a second suspected balloon recently spotted over South America. And what Pentagon officials say, because the water where the balloon crashed down is fairly shallow, they expect recovery operations to be short.
Ellen Lopez for us, thank you. Let's bring in ABC's Britt Clennett in Hong Kong and Mary Alice Parks at the White House for more on this. Britt, let's go ahead and start with you. China calling this a serious violation of international practice. So what are you learning about what a Chinese response could look like?
Well, China likes to talk about reciprocal action. So the question is really what they believe is reciprocal. You know, if they get their hands on a U.S. surveillance system in the future, maybe they will make a big deal about intercepting it, you know. But if China were to respond kind of militarily, that might be actually admitting that this balloon wasn't civilian. So there's a fine line that it needs to walk here. It is important to note that despite the strongly worded response, which could also be geared at its domestic audience as well, all recent signs indicate that China wants to stabilize ties because it needs to focus on its battered economy. So in terms of retaliation, there might not be the appetite for a kind of statement response.
And Mary Alice, let's bring you in on this because the Biden administration has received a ton of criticism, especially from Republicans. What calculations went into Biden's decision on how to handle this?
Yeah, with the administration facing a lot of questions about why they didn't move to shoot this down over a week ago when they first spotted it over the Pacific and then over Alaska. But it doesn't seem like the president was really engaged with the military over options until it re-entered U.S. airspace over Idaho and Montana days later. You know, the White House is really leaning into this idea that he was listening to his military advisors, that he said shoot it down back on Wednesday, but that they advised to wait until there wasn't a danger to people or anyone on the ground. They're also saying that they were able to learn a lot about the balloon by tracking it for all of these days, that collection was valuable. And they're saying, look, at least we did something, that this has happened before, it's happening all over the world. It happened over the last administration, but we handled it, we shot it down, we did something. Of course, they admit that this time was really different.
And it's not just happening here in the U.S. Britt, let's go back to you. What do we know about other balloons like this one that China is using around the world?
Well, according to U.S. officials, these kinds of balloons have been tracked passing over the U.S. in recent years on multiple occasions, but it's not clear how frequently or what their purpose was. There have been spotted all over other countries too that China has a strategic interest in, including the Philippines and reportedly India too. Now, they could be used for surveillance, intelligence, surveying missions. We don't really know, but China is sticking to its story that this is a civil balloon, but we have very little information on this. If this is the case, what company is involved? You know, why would it need to fly a gigantic balloon over other sovereign countries?
And finally, Mary Alice, what are U.S. officials saying about where this leaves U.S. relations with China now?
Yeah, it's remarkable to think that this was likely the first U.S. physical, kinetic military action against China since the Korean War. And it comes just as Secretary of State Blinken was supposed to be headed towards China. And that trip, we know, was going to be a big deal. It was going to be the first Biden cabinet secretary to go to Beijing. You know, I talked to a senior administration official overnight who told me that the approach to China will continue to be one of calm, being resolute and practical to manage the competition between the two countries so it doesn't veer into conflict. That's a lot of diplomatic speak when we know that this was a major diplomatic mess. I mean, the reality is that the U.S. was on the phone and meeting with China officials nonstop over the last few days, trying to tell them that this was unacceptable. And it's really hard to see now how these two countries do anything constructive together going forward.
A major setback and something to watch closely. Mary Alice, Britt Clenett, thank you so much. We appreciate it.